It's helping. It does help to bring the world more into balance, doesn't it? When women claim their power and men have their power, and then the masculine and the feminine within each of us is balanced out. Is that kind of where we're all
Absolutely.
going?
Absolutely. That's what the word yoga basically means. You know, like, okay, the literal translation is to yoke, or to bring together, to unite, to create balance. If you're going to yoke something to the front of a cart, you know, like, so you've got two horses, well, if they're running out of balance, it's not going to happen. But if they're running in balance, it will. So basically, on a human level, it's male and female, and we've got to run together.
So
otherwise, we're in imbalance, and we don't find real yoga.
So you've met,
but it sounds like a... Go on, sorry.
I was going to say, you've met the Dalai Lama in person, haven't you? And quite a few other, I guess you'd call them, well-known spiritual people, Iyengar, Muktananda. Who's the most interesting spiritual person you've met, or maybe challenge your preconceptions of them, or who's the person you always tell stories of?
Oh, I'd have to say my late guru, Paramahansa Satyananda. He was, you know, I could actually curl people's hair with the odd story about him. He was a character. He really was a character. He was way outside of the frame of what most people would consider to be the frame of a guru, but he was exceptional as well. He used to say of himself, just as an example, I am the guru of all of the bent people. The bent people come to me. I'm the one that accepts the people that are very different. He used to say that. And I don't know if I was considered to be bent or very different at that time, but all I can say is that being under his influence for, you know, some years, it certainly made a huge difference to my outlook. And, you know, it introduced me into the more refined aspects of existence, yes. So he was the one that really created a big impression. But I've met others too, you know. I've met quite a few people over the years.
So when you meet someone, can you tell if they're, I don't know what the word is exactly, but, you know, if you don't know anything about them, you don't know if they practice yoga or if they're spiritual or whatever, is there something about a person that you can tell how much, whether they've been introduced to those other layers of reality, or how much of what's going on they know, or you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a way to sort of tell with people? You look at that person and go, oh yeah, they're waking up, they're awake, they're not awake yet, you know.
Well, if you're talking about enlightenment, I think the whole enlightenment thing is quite conceptual in regards to how most of us think about it. And it would be very rare to come across somebody who was completely enlightened. And I have been told, and I also feel for myself, that enlightenment is a progressive thing. It doesn't necessarily happen all at once. It just progresses. You know, this year it's a bit more and a bit more, whatever. But just as an example, a lot of people really like to feel that they're from Anahata chakra. You know, like the chakras represent different levels of perception or different levels of being. And a lot of people like to think that they're from Anahata chakra. Well, the simple fact of the matter is that if they were truly from Anahata chakra, they would never get upset with anything. I'm going to say that again. They would never get upset with anything. And so if a person does say, well, I'm Anahata or whatever, and it's quite a desirable place to be from, and then you turn around and you press a button and they snap at you, or they get even a little bit negative about something, they're not. So, you know, it's just interesting seeing where people are and what they think they are and everything like that. Most of it's conceptual, and we've all got a lot of work to do.
So when you're working with someone then as a teacher, do you have that discernment level to be able to just kind of test them, I guess, just push a little bit here or push a little bit there to see where their buttons are in order to get a fuller idea of what's going on for them?
Yeah, absolutely. In Patanjali Sutras, it talks about perception as being a very key element to be developed, the perceptive ability of a human being. So, you know, discernment does often relates to perception considerably. If a person didn't have conception, well, then they wouldn't have anything to discern, so to speak. And so, yes, by developing the perception or the ability to perceive deeply, you can look at a person, you can just watch a person the way they walk. You know, we all, like, there's the body language, there's the emotional language. There's all sorts of different ways of just getting an idea of, you know, where a person's coming from, or perhaps they have little difficulties. And like, I know for myself, and I'm quite sure everybody else is in this boat, I'm not always right. So I've learnt that. So if I do have a thought about somebody, I've learnt to sort of sit back on it and just let it unfold whether I am right or not right. And so I don't immediately dive in there and try and push buttons or anything. But just the simple fact of making a daily routine a little bit demanding, like getting up early, you know, cutting out all the favourite foods, but still supplying nice food, and just things like that for a period of time, it triggers people off, you know. We're actually a lot more attached to what we have around us on a daily level than what we ever think. And when we remove ourselves, and perhaps we can't get Vegemite, well then, you know, things start to come up, and or we can't get honey when we want it, you know, things come up. So it's actually quite simple to just create a simple environment and watch people live within it. Yeah.
Sounds fascinating. So the reason we're having this talk is because you're going to be teaching at the conference that's happening in April. So I'll put details about that underneath this video for people. So when you're at the conference, if there was one thing that students would grasp when you teach, what's the one thing that you really hope that people always go away with? I would bring it back to myself. I would say that one thing would be to recognise in me and anybody else a very deep love for the science of yoga. And I would hope that by recognising that somebody has a very deep love for something, you know, for the yoga, would inspire them to investigate it a little bit for themselves. Because as far as I'm concerned, and I'll try not to be dogmatic here, but it's hard. As far as I'm concerned, the science of yoga it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. It covers every facet of the human being and the human nature, and there's a technique for every problem or anything that you want to develop. It's a fantastic science, and so I would hope that if I on a public level was talking or doing whatever, that people would recognise in me that I have a deep love for yoga, and that would inspire them to pursue it a bit more. And that begs me to ask this one final question. Can yoga, therefore, save the world? No, it saves the individual. It's the individual it's the individual all put together that can potentially save the world. But, you know, I actually think that the world's more than capable of saving itself. We as human beings consider we give ourselves too much credit. And you know, we're all running around trying to save the planet, but the planet only has to shrug. We're all gone. I think the planet is in a position of saving itself. We are in the position of needing to save the human race. Ourselves. And so can yoga save us?
Individually, yes.
Individually. Fantastic.